Good evening, everyone. Dr. Rao here. Hope you are all doing well. Friday, lot of things to be done are done successfully. And I was listening to somebody, and then they were talking about how mechanical at workplace was, and how there's nobody to turn to when they have a down day or down time in their life. So they were talking about that, and then they were asking me, what do you think? I said, this is something I see all the time, because people uh, go about without really wondering whether we need help or we can develop the help. That's such kind of questions, right? People may be born in a good family. The mother and father are very loving and helpful, and they may not give you a chance to really develop that inner resilience, and you go into the society and nobody accepts like the parents do, and then you got to learn how to gain that acceptance and all that, and make friends, and look to them for guidance or help in the time of stress. Some people will get it, some people will not, and there are so many other people with good heart, maybe they'll be there for you at the time. But I look at this a little deeper. What was the reason why we are kind of needing the help, and also really think that there's help outside of us, or because we are not educated about inner turning and finding it is. So this I came to understand by studying ancient wisdom, probably at the age of 40, 50, something like that. It was amazing to see how much they invaded inside and found corners and places where we are really resilient. And then tapping that, we don't need anybody to really, not arrogance, but more of not having this ego that is prevalent in the modern society. Everywhere we go, first of all, they raise our ego from the childhood, give us a name, give us a family, and do some things just for the upliftment of the ego. And a lot of people develop that, and then they kind of want to be friendly with people who kind of elating them with that. And also they kind of really cultivate friendships that really make it grow and all that, and they think we are like-minded, we are resonating with the minds and all that, but essentially uh, the ego development later on becomes a problem, basically. um, Instead of that, if you turn inward and then you find your real inner self, that is beyond this persona, this titles, this accumulations, whatever that you have. Those persona is not really us, it's a shadow of us, right? And we make the mistake of identifying with that. That is the one which needs psychological, that is the one which wants to be consoled and all that, right? And then once you realize that is only our shadow, and it's really not our authentic self, then you are given the task of finding that, within yourself. There are so many ways, so many thousands of years people have been with that. Um, Ego transcendence is the is what the consequence of knowing your real inner self. Obviously, right? Once you landed up in your real inner authentic self, once you stay there, then you will be transcending the man-made or thought-made or society-made ego. A lot of modern time problems for us is we allow the ego to grow up, and then we kind of allow to pursue that, and then later on that ego wants comfort, wants say it's more like a, we go for some other crutch, like smoking, alcohol, drugs, or whatever people go into as a crutch in the times of suffering. But if you could really understand the broad spectrum of it and go inward and find out what your inner, essential, intelligent, authentic self feels, then you can really invoke that power and come out and then solve the problem. That is, I think, is something we missed. And even the psychologists, psychiatry, and all that also missed because they didn't know how to go beyond one person's thought, like a Freud or Sigmund, whatever they. But then, if they just stopped and looked at any ancient Hebrew text or Hindu text or Muslim text or Christian, any of them, they always talked about the inner divine self within us, And once you are in that, then you don't need anything in the form of profits. Whatever work you do is like more like a worship, and you don't need to be inflated about your ego because you are transcending the ego. It's a beautiful place to be in. Okay, then whatever you do out of your heartfulness, lovingness, and maybe thinking that we are all in one boat. Let's be helpful to each other. Okay, but that help taking from somebody could be a crutch too. That's what I'm saying. So it doesn't have to be, but it could be. People are not exploring themselves as much as they should because they are kind of, really they say, oh, we are all friendly together, we are exploring together, and all that. That doesn't give you the long lasting inner resilience that you could develop otherwise. It's like anything else. Suppose you are having a very tragic situation and people come and console you, but still your mm, heart aches, right? So, sorry about that. There was a call. It's a kind of taking that situation, finding what is really your inner response, and learning about yourself, and really putting the situation in the proper context, not allowing the ego to come. So I think that's a big problem because there's so much of drug addiction, so much of divorce, so much of loneliness, so much of suicide rate in the modern society. Anywhere you go to India, you go to China, you go to everywhere, there's the same thing is there because people are not giving importance to the inner being as much as they do for the outer working self, right? So that's where they don't have the time, they don't have the ways to turn inward and reflect on life and learn from the mirror of the life which shows you exactly as you are. Okay, once you have that, then you will be able to really develop that inner resilience. It's like you have hurdles, and then you are jumping on the hurdles, thereby you develop the strength of the legs. If you don't attempt, you go around it, you will never be able to get the jump or height or strength that you need in the legs. Okay, it's like that. Any hurdles, psychological hurdles that come through, you may not be able to do that right away. Some situations are so overwhelming, but then you go to somebody who directs you to your inner core, real self, and that is the real guru. The ones who tells you to sustain that inner core, find out that inner core, and also sustain that and develop that, and then have the inner resilience of that. And there, by what happens, the reactive emotional persona or your thought conditioned developed persona is not you're coming from. You're coming from the inner authentic self, which is, they say authentic self, but I would say It's more like our inner essence, life force, consciousness, or any number of things you can give title. Okay, uh, many people say, "Oh, we are going to join together and learn together." Are they? Do they need all those people to come and help you to in that life of situation, or do you want to rely on your inner um, vivek source? That vivek means the discriminating faculty, discriminating between what is permanent, what is temporary, what is really fulfilling in the long run, what is not, that kind of thing. Okay, so it's a question of going this. It's a self-reflection, self-knowing, and really staying in that requires a lot of control of the senses and also the mind, the thought-made mind. We spent so many years developing this mind-made, thought-made mind or ego, and we kind of think that is what we are. This is my taste. This is the way I look at it. This is the way I react. So you develop that all, to be not having that react and to be in that inner essence, which is serene, peaceful, joyful self of yourself. Once you touch that, you will you will really taste that joyful self, happiness itself, peace itself, and then that was the focus of the ancient thousands of years, not even a few years, thousands of years, but the essence was, they said, you don't say to people, I'm going to teach you everything, but you encourage them to go inward and find out for themselves what is a real inner guru is. Okay, so that I'm really convinced about that, because the few times that you kind of turn inward and then touch yourself, you will be more coming to it, coming to it. With you go to the outward life and live it, and then you come back. It's like I talk about a tree with a shade, and we are working in the sun, and suddenly we go to the tree, we have the shade feel. That is how I feel the inner, not anything according to religious rituals, but questioning, finding, having the knowledge about our inner self, and then really touching it. That's the one that makes a lot of difference. And it doesn't matter, because life may throw so many challenges at us. It doesn't matter. We can have the capacity to go through them. Okay? There are Sanskrit terms for this, Atma Sakshatkar, this is self-realization. Then you can have a Jivan Mukta, that is liberated while living. In between is like the one who established in the wisdom. All those different terms are there, but they are pretty pretty heavy, big deal for people who are established in the ego, because the ego is driving. It doesn't even allow you to see something is evident to somebody else. It doesn't allow you to see yourself. You are blind to that, because you are taken over by the thought made persona or the ego. Okay. Mm. So what I am talking about, inward. What is happening in the modern society is outward. All the group support, somebody else's friendly support, they are all okay, nice things to do. I will also be sympathy to my patient who comes in with suffering, right? That's not it. But then at the time he may need treatment, but then um, he may need some inward psychological support. But this kind of understanding human life is like that. We can have attacks of disease and illness and death like that. All those things are there. But then as we encourage them, as we simple illness is okay, but then they may have incurable illness, and then the ego kind of fights very hard, all that, and then they really feels bad about having the illness, missing out on a lot of things, and fear of death, and all that. These all explored very deeply in the ancient wisdom. Tragedy is the modern so-called scientific people are kind of closed their mind, and that's why they are spreading this psychological help from outside as the solution. But then they are also given up. They all just want to give some pills. Okay, so a therapist that is sitting in front of you has had this inner exploration, establish himself in the inner reality, and then he will be able to be away from you, not to overwhelm you, but help you, gently guiding you to explore your own self and get the. It's like building your own house. If somebody teaches you and you do it very nicely, how much how much satisfaction, fulfillment you have, right? Like that. So it's all a question of having a perspective of outward or inward. I'm not afraid of questioning the current psychological structure and the prevalence of increasing mental illness and suicidal rates and depression rates and all that. Right. So I think they're wrong. And I think they're doing a service without examining whether it is really completely true or not. So there is a case study I heard one that made me realize a lot of things. There was this old woman who was suffering from depression for a long time, several years, but she had been going to this particular therapist, and she had seen him so many times in a year, every week or every month, or whatever frequency it is, and suddenly she comes one day and says, I don't need your service anymore, sir. Thank you very much for all these years. Then he says, why are you? I feel completely normal. I don't have any depression, any feelings like that. So what happened? How did you have this? Did somebody give you some other medication? No, I'm not taking any medications. No, I went to this philosopher's talk, and he was talking about ending of thought. And I observed the thought, and then I became separate from these depressive feelings, and I was able to really not go into the thoughts again, and the thoughts disappear. So it's basically, this is the ending of thought. Several steps are there, from observation, from awareness of it, from allowing it to dissolve by itself. Identifying is just a thought. Before, she was given identification through the thought. That's why she was getting more negative, more depressed. But this talk did not happen on one-to-one with her, with that philosopher talking. It happened in the group of 5,000 people listening to the philosopher. So she describes that to the man, and this man really intrigued. How this happened? I've tried to treat her for so many years. So he's a genuine person, right? Whatever he knew, he is practicing. So he goes and meets the philosopher and ask the philosopher, what do you think has gone on? What did you say? I did not say anything about depression, but I said about thought. I said about negative thought and all that. But a lot of people take thoughts for real and they identify with them and they suffer from it. But if you observe the thought and then allow them to really go away, but use the thought when you need to do practical things. But don't use thought to describe yourself, to identify yourself with that, right? So that's what he told him, and then he said, "What are you doing now?" I'm a psychiatrist. I'm helping these people. Okay, um, now what are the conditions that produces this kind of psychiatric condition? Many of the depressions, anxieties, and so many things, right? It's not the organic schizophrenia, not that, but the behavioral, environmental, society, loneliness, all those things, right? And the man says, because the conditions are like that, society doesn't get along, the competition, there is a lack of care, lack of love, so many things. Then the philosopher says, you are fixing symptoms, but you are not attending to the root causes of the society which is producing this problem. One of them I identifying is psychological health comes from within you if you allow your inner resilience to grow. There are methods for it. That's what I'm getting at. So the philosopher tells you that, and the psychiatrist comes back and says, "Yeah, that is true. We just sit there and then let people go through the familial, societal, countrywide, so many problems, and they come to us and we give them some symptomatic consoling or talking for 45 minutes and for that so much charge and all that. But at the end of it, the person is still going to same conditions. Again, one word, one thought breaks up his problems. Okay, think about that. Think about the real solutions that you can see that. Okay, when you see that, it will be really easy to understand in real situations. Somebody said something, who is it that in me that takes it so severely? What is this ego? Why should it feel like that? So you identify yourself like that. You validate through the roles or whatever you have. Like I'm a doctor. If everybody gives me value, only if I'm a doctor, but I go somewhere else where I don't declare I'm a doctor, and they don't give me the respect, I should feel bad about it because they are only looking for the role. But once I open my mouth to talk about it, understand these things, and just try to be helpful, they give me respect. I don't need to have those roles. Okay, I can use the roles to serve the society. That's okay, but I don't have to use the role to, to uplift my ego. That is what is happening in real life. You don't have to point it out. You can find out for yourself. You know how? Go into the society, and then in the relationship with whoever you have, that is a mirror which shows you how you are inside. Okay, so are you coming from the ego, or are you coming from your inner real essence self? That's the question. Okay, pretty deep for a lot of people, but once you start exploring like that, or go and spend a day at office, come back, sit down and take some real good time, like a 10-15 minutes just for that. Explore what has happened inside of you during the day. See all the images in that mirror and then try to understand them. Suppose you have um, really tersely address somebody, you may be in a situation where it is difficult to talk nicely. Another, you want to, suppose I'm at a court and then I needed a adrenaline shot and I wanted adrenaline shot ready already, and she doesn't give it. I kind of alert her, come on, give it to me because I don't have time. 3 minutes patient will stop breathing, right? So those kind of situations you can understand. But when it is addressed to personal, to some people, just to say, okay, we are, uh, so that kind of thing. Okay. So think about it, and then you will know about yourself, not your ego, but your inner self. You understand how the ego is reacting, but you are watching it as awareness. That is you watching your thought. Simple as that. Okay. So this is called Atma Chintan, self inquiry. And you stay there and you will be doing all of that. And then you will discover your inner essence. And that is very resilient, tremendous energy, because that is not the mind reacting. That's not the mind feeling or thinking about so many things. It's a silent witness. That is a witness consciousness you are, you identify that. It's not a concept. You can look at it, that intelligence that is separate from your reacting ego or reacting mind, that's not you. Hopefully this makes sense for you. Does it make sense to anybody? Come up and tell me how you feel about this. You can bring it into your life and tremendously, um, feel fulfilled and joyful. Basically, you are not going to go through all those rigmaroles. You don't have to come up in the groups and tell everything and say, I'm doing this. You have to do it for yourself, then that will be good. So, sorry about that. Something came up on its own. This is a system-wide problem. So it's a kind of all the people who are in that are a kind of victims in the system. So um, it's not to be angry about anybody. It's just understanding how human beings work, how human beings use their intelligence to go inward and find out how some people were really lived that in that energy. So for them, they kind of sacrificed everything. They kind of because it didn't matter much. Their inner joyful self is everything, so they were able to maintain their body health and mental health much longer. They enjoyed serenity, stillness of mind, and they have accomplished a lot of things. But then they are not the deficient. For example, if they built something like a big temple, they didn't put their name on it because they were happy to do that. So that way the work is always became a worship. Even BK Iyengar, when he was doing yoga, he did 10,000 demonstrations around Europe. But he said every time he stepped on stage and every time he did asana, that particular asana has become a prayer to his Lord. So he converted all his work into worship. Okay, so there is no question of you go there to say, oh, I'm so great, or there's no question of you go there asking so much money or anything. Whatever they got, that's it. See, the whole inward way to look at was there in the culture, but then a lot of people adopted it. Even lately, Bhutan was doing it. Outward things are not important, inward things are important. But the moment internet came, all the problems of modern age came to. But what I'm saying is not to get away from the modern times, modern age. Understand, even in this time, you can understand and you can gain knowledge and you can turn inward and find your real self and stay there. And then you'll have a lot of relief from your mental uh, storms or your egoic battles. And all those egogenic things are not there. Then you can be in the modern life, but understand the intelligence that we have about knowing what is what, you will improve your life. You don't want to, and you want to be in the clutches of the ego and the thought and all that, then that's your choice, right? So I've been living that inner oriented essence approach. They say, like Ramana Maharshi told, okay, one's attention has always to be poised on one's inner self, guiding principle. Okay, so everything is much simpler, much easier, much more fulfilling too. And also, it's a serene, joyful, and happy state. Okay. Hi, Janet. How are you? You would have liked this, what I was talking about, because I talked to you about the inner self that is important, that stay there and transcend the ego, and thereby you will be the source of psychological help other people. Not that you don't feel, you don't have sympathy, you don't have kindness. No, you will, but you also have this uh, kind of what we call treasure of kindness, love, and affection to people, because you realize you are one with everybody. See, that's why I see a lot of suffering going around, right? Uh, and then people reach out to me. It's about them. It's about their suffering, and I have automatic empathy, and I also know how they can be out of that. But then they have to make the effort, right? So I'm willing to stay there. But once they understand that, it's so much. It may not happen right away, but it will happen down the line. Hi, Caroline.
Hello. So I think you get what you give. If you emit happiness, joy, togetherness, then that is what you will most times receive back. The hard part is I think a lot of that has changed since the whole pandemic. So it's harder for us to connect, but then I think we need to make more of an effort.
What if we are already connected? We are already connected as a human tribe.
Well, we are already connected, but even, I will say, even with friends, you have a friend, I have a friend of mine, she went through a really, really difficult time this winter. And she kind of chose to disconnect from our group.
That's the ego. That is the ego I'm talking about.
Right. But you allow her, you love her enough, you allow her the space, and you give her grace.
Yeah, sure.
And I would reach out to her every so often. And I think it was February, she celebrated her 60th birthday. And I took her over a huge bouquet of flowers because she really doesn't need anything.
Mm.
And I mean, we spent some time together, but it just wasn't the same yet.
Yeah.
She needed to go through whatever she was going through. And eventually, when we got back to the spring, we came back together and things were okay again. But sometimes people go through hard periods. They're not always going to share that with you. Yeah. And I'm not a big believer in like forcing my friends to like communicate with me.
No, that's what I'm saying. Leave them to build their own inner resilience. But there is so much knowledge about it that we should be using. That's what I'm saying.
Right. But, give grace, give understanding. I gave her space.
Yeah, that's
she came back.
It's a heartfulness, giving them the friendship, giving them the, non-judgmental thing. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But grace is a very, very hard thing for some of us to give, for some of us to accept.
That's why I'm saying the underlying mechanism of thought-built ego makes us so hard. Otherwise, grace is already there. So it is natural for us to be human.
It is there, but a lot of us are like, you're suspicious of new people, and you don't want to let new people in, even if they have the best intentions. And I think sometimes maybe just take a deep breath and have a little faith and see.
Did you listen what I said about the development of this persona which comes in the way between us? And that is what is hesitant about reaching out to people and all that too. But basically, that ego sensation starts from the birth, and they allow us to develop that, both our schools, college, and our society, culture, everything is direct towards in the modern life. But once we see that, we love people who are really not egotistical, but more like a heartful people. That's, yeah.
Right. And it's just allowing ourselves. And I think a lot of us that have struggled with weight issues, we're maybe a little more guarded.
Yeah.
But
who is that guarding? That's the thing I'm trying to think of. The ego Our persona God makes us guard against other people. But if we realize we are not just that, we are just an inner human being, and then we don't have to feel so threatened, you know.
Right. And learn that there are some people that are just going to accept us for who we are, essentially, purely, beautifully.
Yeah.
And it's the treasure when you find those people and then you embrace them and you can share your life with them.
Yeah, that is what I'm finding out, Caroline. What it is you have the inner authenticity in everybody. There we are all the same. You know, once we have that understanding, then we don't need somebody separate from us, and their characters are something we should judge on. You know, that kind of thing. So we all feel that separation is not the real thing for us. Union is that. But then our upbringing, our cultures have evolved like that, especially modern times. They have evolved such a way that we identify with the division rather than the union. We identify with the outward things rather than what is inward thing. We identify with the mind-made things rather than heartfelt things. Think on those lines, and then you will see what I'm talking about. It's not judging them. It's kind of um, by pointing out to the value that we have as human beings, the intelligence that we have as human beings, you know, that is all transcended with the ego development. But if you understand ego is something, a shadow of yours, you are not really that, then you will end up in your real inner self. And that is very, very resilient, very powerful. Thanks, Carlin, for coming up and saying those things. Okay. Anybody else? This psychological suffering is something is there from ages, from ancient times to now. But the relief of suffering was the goal of Buddha also, right? Um, Gautam Buddha, when Siddhartha, he used to be a prince and then he became a major world teacher, right? So he settled on that. And he was enrolled in a lot of luxuries in the beginning because his father was told by the astrologers that he will either become a great emperor or great sage. He didn't want him to be a sage, he wanted him a great emperor, right? So he surrounded all sorts of luxuries, and he was like that till 28 or so. He was married, he enjoyed all the pleasures and all that. And suddenly he sees the bad things about somebody old, somebody deceased, somebody died. These three things he sees when he went out of the palace one day. And then he was devastated by the suffering he saw, and he wanted to find out why there is suffering in the world, what is the reason. And one of the solutions he talked about was at the age of 83 or something, he was suffering from diabetes. But his one of the followers of him raised a question and said, "You set out to know what is the cause of suffering, how to resolve it, but you became old, you are diseased now, you're going to die in a few days. You know, now how did you?" He said, "Those things of the disease, old age, and then dying, they're all arrows by the life that are coming at us. That we cannot escape, we cannot change. But how we respond to that first arrow, the reaction that is, that I can help myself." So he was somebody named Buddha. Means Buddha word means the one who conquered his mind. See, modern times we forgot about that. We think our mind is so great, it can create an alternative shadow for us, which is the ego. But if you understand the mind processes and not allow it to make a egoic structure, and you don't have to go through all the problems of the ego. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. So by turning inward, you're not going to get it because somebody else give you a medication or whatever. No, you got to reflect on life. You got to understand life. You got to really see the life in your own experience. And suppose you are feeling jealous about somebody, that's the reality. That is something you see, and then you see that at the level of body and mind we may be different, but at the level of our inner being, the life force, the eyewitness, we are all one. We are all the same, right? Once you understand that, it doesn't matter somebody has achieved something else. You don't be um, jealous because you don't feel who is that feeling? That ego, that mind made ego. Once you see that, you are real witness consciousness, and that's why you are in that awareness, you are there, and then you will easily transcend that, the mind made things, okay, versus really what forever fulfilled self we have. Okay, so it's not a big secret about all these things. The ancient wisdoms, you take any ancient text in any culture, they always identified this uh, inner dwelling that is life. That life comes back, all the time. Once you understand that, then you will be able to live in a modern life where it is all over, is all burden, right? So it is easy to live modern life when you really understand the outward things are impermanent and let them go. Don't be attached so much to them. Then you will be attached to the inner core, which is always there, be there. Okay. Anybody else want to come up before I close the room? Okay. I think we have been talking about 43 minutes now. So couple of more minutes I will have to go. Okay, thank you all, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. I'm going to do that Saturday webinar that I do every Saturday at 9 a.m. Thank you.